So welcome everybody. Just got back from sunny Orlando, Florida. I'm not sure, a lot of the folks I think online are probably from the Southern Ontario area where we're looking at a nice sunny day, but a dump of snow. So it's a very different environment than we left, Christian, 3-4 days ago when it was 85 degrees and 100% humidity.
Yeah, it's not quite as cold out here, but I know that with that, looking at the news and you had some powdery guests arrive last night, so.
Yeah, it's not normal for us this time of year, but it did happen. Caught us a little unprepared. Just got the snows on the car.
It's the payback for sitting down in 85-degree weather, like 80.
Working on the tan.
I know.
Not that we saw the outside of a convention center very much last week.
I was going to say that if you actually ventured down to the swimming pool at one point, then is probably what doomed this the weather patterns.
Exactly. There we go. Cool. We've got a couple other folks that we're going to be joining us. Joel Olson is actually double booked with a conference in Slovenia, apparently. So he's going to be multitasking for the first half hour or so, and then he's going to jump in the later half from there. Now we also have the Q&A window open. So I mean we're going to go through our own discussion, but if folks online have questions, things they're curious about, by all means pop a question in there. We'll try and keep an eye on that. I've got it going on another monitor in the background here, so we can respond to that as well. So Christian, why don't we kick it off? Just sort of some highlights, sound bits, things that you found interesting at the conference last week.
Well, there's quite a bit. And I know you've heard me say this last week. I think I've been attending 2 or 3 Microsoft conferences per year for the last decade, and this was one of the best layouts and well run. So the hub, the expo hall, was fantastic as you walk end to end, and it was quite a walk. I don't know how far.
It's a long walk, but you're in one building, which was great. Yeah.
A quarter mile, I don't know, to walk the length of that. But it was fairly evenly dispersed and people, everywhere. And I don't know what the final numbers were, if you heard, but there were well over 25,000, probably closer to 30,000.
Yeah, I heard the 30,000 number.
Yeah. So it was, as far as the overall event, just great layout, great community area. It really kind of established areas for going and sitting down and collaborating with other members of the community. So it was a great event overall.
Yeah, kudos to Microsoft. I mean, the logistics of getting 30,000 people fed and into sessions every day for 5 days is pretty impressive.
Now, as far as the keynotes, the big takeaways, I mean, there were a bunch of things which really stood out to me. As we'll talk about, we'll get more in depth, but my background in knowledge and information management and Project Cortex was pretty exciting to hear about some of that. And the search and AI capabilities are all part of that. I think the broader intelligent intranet story and a lot of the various features that came out of that were all very exciting. But then there was other things that that I've over the course of the week, and now that we've had more time to kind of consume some of the information, to do more of a deep dive in what's happening with Microsoft Project, and the new project was very cool. Other things that you and I didn't have a chance to discuss earlier in the week, like the productivity score and some of the plans around that. So some really interesting things that are coming out. Microsoft is looking at not just throwing new features at us, but things like the productivity score, which look at how we're consuming the various features and how we're consuming content, how we're performing within meetings, and helping us improve both the user experiences as well as the technology that we're using to get more out of the investments that we're making.
Right. Yeah, and just to give people some context on the conference itself, I mean, it is an all-up Microsoft technology conference, and there's literally somewhere north of 1,800 sessions through the week. I mean, it's a massive amount of content. And Christian, you and I were more focused on the Office 365, the SharePoint, the modern workplace side of things. I mean, that's just a small snippet of it. I mean, the week started with Satya, who's the CEO of Microsoft, kicking off his keynote. I mean, he goes across the whole stack. He's talking about Azure and AI and machine learning and all the cool things they're doing from there. And he talked a bit about the Office 365 side of things, but then the week kind of broke from there, and we had a variety of different keynotes from VPs of the different product lines, and you and I, of course, were very interested to hear what Jeff Teeper was saying, and he's kind of the depending on who you talk to, the father or the grandfather of SharePoint, and what's happening from that roadmap point of view. I mean, he had a fire hose of announcements and interesting things coming out from that point of view.
Yeah, and at the broader kind of Microsoft 365, which is even above that with Jared Spataro. I mean, his keynote covered a lot of ground. If you go take a look at the blog posts out on, available on the Microsoft Tech community and out on the Microsoft 365 blog, of course, you can see, everything that Jeff Teeper covered in his, the walkthrough of each of the different features. Jared covered, just a ton of stuff again. End to end, just so much was included there. But I think Teeper covered kind of the high level, each of the different points which are, more relevant to what we do.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, even on the Microsoft Teams side, I mean, you can't go anywhere at a Microsoft event these days and not hear about Teams. It's huge. I love it. We're actually not, full disclosure, we're not using it for this session. We're using GoToWebinar. Old habits die hard. Just really familiar with GoToWebinar for running events like this. But some of the cool things they had on the Teams side that would be relevant for this is, things like background blur. I could make the stuff behind me disappear and me come in from a focus point of view. In fact, I could actually put myself into a fake environment like a boardroom or sitting on a beach by just inserting a background image behind me. And the AI figures out, where's my profile and cuts me out and sticks me onto that. Even the ability to take away background noise. They had a video of a guy doing a Teams call in a busy construction site, and you hear the beep, beep, beep of the truck backing up beside him, and then they turn on the audio enhancement, and it's not just an audio filter. It's actually AI saying, okay, who's speaking and what's irrelevant, and just take that right out of the picture from there. So some really cool stuff. Even one that I'm trying to focus on it right now because I'm looking at my laptop and my webcam camera is at the top of my laptop. So your eyes tend to go up. It can actually literally adjust people's eyes so they feel like they're looking at the screen. In fact, they're actually looking off screen at a camera. Some of it gets a little creepy, but it's actually
that's
pretty
not
cool.
creepy at all, Well, no, I was just thinking of that feature. I mean, there's that feature along with I don't know what to describe it, like the softening, like there's that magic button to make
the background blur, yeah.
Well, there's the background blur, and then there's the audio enhancements, and there's also the visual enhancements. So it softens like an HD video to everybody, accuse. I know we do some meetings, and somebody's just like, "Well, is he wearing like eye makeup or something?" Like, no, it's just the filters part of that to try and make people look, I don't know, more appealing. But it's what are they trying to do? We're getting very close. We're moving towards max headroom. That's what I guess.
I was going to say that there'll be an avatar at some point, and you won't care about what you wear or what your hair looks like because it's not actually you. But
well, that's why, and I don't see anything, and maybe they did cover this, but like Julia White did her keynote at the partner conference at Inspire in July, where they did the hologram. And I didn't, I wasn't watching for it, so I don't know if I missed something, if they covered some of that similar ground and shared some of those experiences. I know that there was a huge VR, MR, so mixed reality, virtual reality, segment within the kiosk within the Microsoft areas.
Yeah, the whole SharePoint Spaces thing. Yeah.
Well, there's the SharePoint Spaces is one piece of it, but I mean just the broader, mixed reality, augmented reality capabilities that Microsoft's working on.
Yeah, that's cool stuff. Actually, I just got a great leading question from Andrea. So she's asking about Project Cortex, which is kind of our top topic. I mean, it's a very cool thing that Microsoft's coming out around, kind of taking some of the ideas that we've seen in Delve of using search and Microsoft Graph, but really going beyond that and bringing some more AI into that to say, okay, how do we do things like automatically organize your content? Andrea was asking about, what changes they're going to see to the term store, to the knowledge management center, content type, search, and all of that gets touched by Project Cortex. Actually, side topic, they did show off a new modern term store, which I was impressed with. I don't think they've touched the term store interface since SharePoint 2007. It's like a dozen years old now. It's pretty dated.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. It's been a long time. I mean, to answer the question, I don't know that so it changes, like you should not stop doing what you're doing.
No.
because things are in preview. It's going to take months for us to start to introduce these things, and it is a additional licensing, or it's part of the advanced licensing. In fact, maybe I shouldn't even said the word licensing, because we don't exactly
that's a black art.
Right. But it will leverage all of that work that you've done. That's a key aspect of this. It's going to sit on top of and leverage those other components. There will be some things that will change about this, like the new term store experience. But again, there will be a migration. Microsoft, they always have a migration path for these kinds of capabilities. But
I think the thing that struck me was that, we've been preaching for how long about how important metadata is, and you shouldn't use folders, and you should tag your content. But the reality is, not to diss people, but people are lazy and they don't like to tag. So there's always that balance. You can't put too much metadata on because people aren't going to fill it out, and it becomes a barrier from that point of view. So the machine learning and the auto categorization, third-party vendors have been doing that for a long time, but it's now coming into the core product. I think it's getting a lot smarter with where the AI, the machine learning is at, that, you can have it actually auto tag content. Some of the examples they had was, let's say you scan, thousands or millions of POs or invoices as such from a records management point of view. You can actually train the system to say, well, this is where the PO number is, this is where the data is, here's the amount, and it can actually extract that content into metadata. And then you can do some interesting things from a reporting point of view to say, okay, I want all POs over a certain value for this customer, and boom, that's actually really easy to do once you've got the metadata there. The challenge is people don't want to put the metadata in, so let's let the machine learning do that for you.
Yeah, it really answers kind of that age-old knowledge management problem. I like the term of the knowledge network, like a neural network, a knowledge network, is that content goes into a knowledge management platform, and knowledge doesn't come back out of that. It's very difficult once you put information in for it to be like you as the user, the creator of that content, those artifacts, be able to go and find those, but to rely on the discovery tools and users to search and to find that unique content, it can be difficult at times. And so how can we leverage all the modern technologies, the artificial intelligence, to be able to start automating some of those user experiences? So one of those things is, so the auto creation of these, this content, the cards, the cards, the visuals around the content, so that the system recognizes that there's suddenly a number of people that are looking for. And if you go look at the blog post, there's an animation where there's they've highlighted a number of acronyms, and one of them is Project Core. And so here's a project, and the system recognizes that there's a lot of interest, there's a lot of activity, a lot of content around Project Core, and so it will go and auto-generate a page, like a Wikipedia page of content, populated with all of these artifacts from all over the system. It recognizes here's Christian, here's Peter, here's Joel and Harjeet. They're the experts on this topic. We'll build us our profiles into this page as well as the top experts on that topic. So as people are going and doing search, the system is getting smarter and smarter, and it is automating more of this content, capturing that, and really kind of building out that discovery, yet another discovery experience, so that as you're reading through content, and that can be surfaced in a SharePoint list or a Word doc or wherever that is presented, that you float over that, you get a visibility into the card, that Wikipedia, that automatically created page, and then can jump over to that and find even more information and research. And a great example, somebody said, well, what about, this is the example in the pre-day that was used. Somebody asked a question. Well, for example, we use WIP, work in progress, for project management. I can't remember what it is. In the telephony world, it means something different.
Completely different, yeah.
Right. And so, here you're going to have potentially 2 pages out there based on the acronym WIP. Well, the system will be intelligent enough to recognize that in context to what we're discussing, it means the telephony. Somebody else goes and researches that, again, in context to their activity and their profile and what they're doing. It might be the project management resources, part of that methodology. And so the system will intelligently identify between those different things. And of course, you'll have, if you're navigated to the wrong one, you'll have the ability to here are other options, other searched terms, and kind of correct that. And the system will then learn from that behavior.
Yeah. I mean, I love the topic card idea. I don't know about you, Christian, but my calendar is typically chock-a-block, back to back to back to back to back all day long, and you're task switching from one to the next to the next. The ability to say, okay, I'm going into this meeting in 2 minutes. Here's a topic page, and it's got all the email communications, all the documents, who's involved in it. Everything I need to know about it is right there.
Right.
Rather than having to dig around through long email threads and attachments and things like that.
Maybe get intelligent, start building in the task, the activities, the workflows to be like to know, okay, here's the information, but what's being asked of me, what's next? And so there's just a lot of automation that you can start to build out of having all this information in one place.
Yeah, you just twigged me on a nice segue there, which is on the task side. So, I mean, this has been a holy grail for Microsoft for a while, that people have tasks here and in Project and Planner, in their personal Outlook and Microsoft To Do, and how do you pull that together into one place? And we're starting to see some progress on that they're saying, okay, let's take what's...
Hey, guys, this is Joel. You got my 100% of my attention now.
Awesome.
Great to have you, and I will be joining the video in a second. But okay. I just wanted to add on here. I spent a little bit of time over in the expo hall with the planner and the project and the to-do and the tasks. And I'm super excited about tasks as well and being able to get that roll up. But I think that for end users, there's this question now of, man, there's so many of these little things where I can be getting data that it seems like it's going to be a little bit overwhelming to have all these different places. Like, oh, should I be in Planner? Should I be in Tasks? Should I be in To Do? Like overlap of To Do with Tasks and Project.
And the new Project.
And all these things.
I mean, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Project, I think, is going to be a big one.
But is To Do becoming the clearinghouse for Microsoft? Like, they seem to be directing that, okay, you'll see your Planner tasks there, you'll see your personal Outlook tasks, you'll see your To Do stuff there. And make that a spot to be able to go to say, okay, what are all the things I'm supposed to be doing, and how do I then prioritize and decide what I'm going to work on?
Well, I look at To Do is the personalized view into all of those different things, and so that's part of the integration. As I mentioned earlier, I spent some time as well taking a look at the new project. That's how I actually got into collaboration technology and found my way into SharePoint. Was my first experience with SharePoint, and Joel knows this. He knew me back then. I did a deployment of SharePoint and Project Server, 2 separate projects, and tried to get them to work, and was frustrated. This is back in 2005. Frustrated with Project Server, but became intrigued with SharePoint, and a year later joined Microsoft to work with this and work with Joel. In fact, we shared an office for a while. So yeah, but it's
full circle.
The task management aspect of it, I mean, it's been a problem for a long time, where there's been all of these disconnected ways that you could create and then view and manage tasks, or poorly managed experiences. And Microsoft over the last year or two has been consolidating that effort. So the way that I consume it now is that I'm not yet members of any new project plans. It's brand new stuff. I'm excited to be in there and play with it. It was architected by the Planner team, by the way, so that people don't think that it was yet another solution that's out there that's different. So a lot of the same people building out that experience as in Planner, but slightly different focused of what they do. But you out of the box have the integration with Teams, and because of the To-Do integration and with Outlook, it also has the ability, as you go and create plans, whether in Planner or in Project, that it will push all of those tasks to your To-Do app, so that I'm constantly using this on my phone, where I can go in there and look at it in a bunch of different ways, but the easiest way is just to go in and pull up the To-Do app and kind of look at and organize my tasks, the various lists across all those projects in one place. So I get an aggregated view whether I'm looking at tasks assigned to me and plans that are out on the Extranet User Manager site, or that on my own company site, or things that I've created on my phone, personal items for me to go and pick up at the grocery store later today. But I can get a view of my day through that app. And that's really new, and that's very exciting.
And I think the end user, if we can say that that's the case where users should use to organize their tasks, I think that idea of the project manager then is, should the project manager be using Planner or Project or Tasks or what to try and send stuff at you?
You still want to have that project manager go in there, assigning the tasks, changing assignments, the priorities, kind of creating new tasks, all those things.
Mm-hmm.
And you have the way to go in and view things, from your My Tasks view.
But also from a project perspective, Right.
There's a good opportunity for what to use when, I think is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Just like we have with Teams and Yammer and Outlook and
absolutely. It's the inner loop of tasks. Yeah.
The universe of tasks. Yes.
Actually, that was interesting. We no longer hear any inner loop, outer loop conversations coming from Microsoft. Although, I'm going to segue us again. I mean, there was a lot of talk that this is the year of Yammer, and Yammer's actually gotten a lot of love from Microsoft in the last little while. They showed off a completely redesigned new interface for it, built on Fluent, which is their new co-authoring, way of building applications in the cloud in general. So, obviously, still a lot of love going on there, and interesting things coming out of Microsoft on that side.
Yeah, I think that this new Yammer is really basically saying, hey, this is a new interface. For so long, like since Microsoft's bought Yammer, there hasn't been any major new
UI changes. No.
So that this really should be seen as the first major renovation to the UI of Yammer, and it's that big.
Yeah, I think they spent the first 2 years figuring out how to unwind it from Amazon and other technologies and get it into the Microsoft fold on Azure and all that, and integrate it at the back end. But I mean, nobody saw that. That was all the plumbing that was happening under the hood. So now they got to do the cool stuff, which is let's put a new face on it.
And right out of the
something we've been asking for.
And right up front you have the a story about kind of three key stories, I think. So we've been hearing about the stream integration with Yammer, and then of course Yammer's a story alongside Teams, and to SharePoint to a certain extent there. But one of the more exciting ones is also around Outlook integration.
Yeah, I think if you looked at the three communication technologies that people use potentially in the Microsoft ecosystem, you've got everybody uses email. I mean, Outlook is just there. It's not going away anytime soon. Teams is getting huge adoption from an internal point of view, and we're starting to see it from an external perspective as well. And then we've got Yammer in the mix as well. And I saw good stories all three ways to say, well, I can be in Outlook, and I can seamlessly migrate a conversation from Outlook email into Teams and back into email again, or I can be viewing my Yammer in my Outlook. I can be in Teams seeing my Yammer. So it's kind of pick the spot that you want to work in, but you can still communicate in the alternate ways very easily from within that interface.
No, I think
feedback loop. We're good.
I think exactly. So I spent couple hours over helping out in the Yammer booths and answering questions, and probably one of the more fulfilling conversations was a fellow MVP that came by, won't name names, but said, I wasn't a Yammer hater, but I just never saw the value in it for the organizations, kind of convinced me. And there were two of us, so Ragnar Heil, I know everybody knows Ragnar, based out of Germany, and so former Microsoft, but he and I sat there talking to this fellow MVP for about 20 minutes, and at the end of which the MVP said, I've changed my opinion. It says I completely understand the value, and it was I use the inner loop, outer loop. I tell the story in a slightly different way, and I know Microsoft is not using that now. But the idea of communities and where it's appropriate. Now, can I go and use and it's still this kind of which tool when discussion that we can't seem to get away from entirely. But when you start to dive into where Microsoft wants to go with that, is start to dive into well, what are you trying to accomplish? What do and talking about scenarios and what they're trying to do in their organization, and understanding the culture of their organization, the culture of collaboration. And when you start to talk about and I'll use that phrase that Microsoft people kind of cringe when you use it, the high velocity conversations and projects versus the community-based, long-term, knowledge base of that side of collaboration, which Yammer is strong in, there really isn't the overlap that you see. Now, can I add 1,000, 1,500 people to a team? Sure. Is that the most efficient, effective way for 1,000, 1,500 people to collaborate around something? Maybe. I would say in most cases not. That it performs better in those smaller, task-oriented, time-oriented, activities. Whereas Yammer, if you are looking to reach out to the community or build like a center of excellence around this, this community, that it better meets those needs. And that's what we're able to convince this MVP around.
Cool. Where do we want to switch it up from here? I mean, we've touched on Teams a little bit. We've mentioned at the beginning some of the interesting things from a enhancement, both video, audio, background, all those sorts of things. We didn't talk about the live captioning and the fact that as we're talking here, if we were using Teams, we could actually have a live feed of the voice to text, but not just in the native language. So if you've got speakers communicating in different languages where they don't have a common tongue between them, they can literally just turn on what dialect they want from a personal preference point of view, and the system will auto-translate as the speaker is speaking through there. So that's pretty cool. I mean, we first saw that in Skype for Business from a one-to-one point of view, but we're seeing that much more broadly within Teams now. So it's interesting where they're going with that. One of the other things I was pretty surprised about is that they're actually building interops from Teams to other vendors. The first one being announced is Cisco and WebEx. You may have an amalgamated, maybe it's an acquisition or something, and this part of the organization uses WebEx and this part uses Teams, and they've got a lot of infrastructure and investment already. Can we make those environments interoperate? So that's pretty cool.
And there was a new announcement that just the last couple of days around Zoom as well. So it's another provider out there, so they're also in discussions, which is pretty exciting. And honestly, that announcement, it surprised me a bit because they had announced a couple months ago about their relationship with Slack, and I thought there was alignment happening there. But Zoom, I think, wisely is looking and saying, hey, we want to get along with everybody, and we want this to make sense. For multiple platforms and not, tie ourselves to one OEM.
The other thing that I thought was interesting, and it kind of speaks to a pain I feel quite often at client sites, is this idea of managed meeting rooms. To say, let's let Microsoft actually manage the AV technology and make sure that it's up current and working and functional. I actually carry around a little mini speakerphone because I don't know how many times I go into a client's conference room and their speakerphone's not working, or the projector's not working, or something else, and the first 15-20 minutes of a meeting gets chewed up trying to figure out how to get the tech to work. And you got 8 or 10 people around the room. I mean, that's a huge productivity loss for the organization if that fight happens regularly every time people try and have meetings. I mean, Microsoft tried to address it in the past with the big surfaces and all the text in that one thing, and it just works, which is great. But not everybody wants to replace all their equipment. They'd like to get what they have working. But let's keep an eye on it and make sure that it functions well so that people are productive from that point of view.
And I think a lot of when you start talking about UC, and you start talking about interop, it's that a company goes from Cisco and they've invested in all these Cisco features in all their conference rooms. Yeah. And then it's like, okay, well now we want to roll out Teams. Does that mean we have to rip out all this stuff? No, we want to be able to let's make our conference rooms be able to quickly move from, hey, this meeting is a Zoom meeting, this meeting is a GoTo meeting or GoTo webinar, and so on. And so the users need to be able to go from meeting to meeting to meeting, and it shouldn't matter. And
what
so the
tech they're
interop
using
as well should be such that it doesn't matter what the user shouldn't have to care. They should be able to get on whatever meeting they need to. The reality is an organization can't just support 100% one vendor or another. The user's lives in a reality kind of sense is whoever you're connecting to may have one technology or another, and a lot of that interop was related to the browser based and being able to have interop from the conference rooms and meetings perspective of being able to go from meeting to meeting to meeting and it not be so disruptive.
And even the support for old school physical. I mean, the fact that you can now put a secondary webcam on a table pointed at an old school whiteboard that people are literally, writing with a marker on, it'll capture that, but it won't just do that. It'll actually take what's been drawn on there and convert it to editable graphics and text and such that you can then use in your virtual whiteboard in Teams. So that's pretty slick.
Which is one of my favorite announcements there was your ability to go from I've drawn a table or I've got a table that's physical and my ability to capture it with a camera or photo and now be able to pull that screen into Excel. I think that's one of the coolest things.
And the other side of that, that's I think equally like if you could drop that same image that maybe you have the table or have some text and have an image associated with that, drop that into PowerPoint and it will take
auto format it and
either you could just delete it and just use the image. So part of for those of us that use PowerPoint as kind of a poor man's Photoshop for image cleanup, but also convert that text from that image into usable text that you can scale and move around and OCR for use within PowerPoint. There's a lot of cool things, but I think this point though about the interoperability and this other technology is I'm interested in seeing, going back to the productivity score, because the technology, the hardware components are part of that, and I need to understand more of what is included within that. I mean, they talk about being able to go and monitor legacy hardware usage and monitor policies around the technology and the usage. It'd be interesting. I mean, it just makes sense to me that all the telephony, all these integrations, like talking about Cisco, talking about using Zoom and other tools and solutions, that would be part of that productivity score. So you can better understand, hey, if we're seeing a decrease in usage of these rooms and more people doing these types of activities on their desktop, well, then do we need to maintain all of these other meeting spaces if people are just, in meetings? Are we seeing a change in the culture from getting up and going to a conference room to have this virtual experience versus wherever you are, just jump into this site? So that would be a measurement that I would want to see, and I'd
be curious because I still experience at most clients that it's a challenge to actually book a meeting room because they're in hot demand and there's not enough of them. I want to back up actually to a comment that was made around, Joel, you talked about taking a picture of a table and turning it into an Excel. That's actually part of a bigger conversation, which is there's now a new Office mobile app that Microsoft has launched out. I actually tried to get on. They put it in test flight with iOS. The beta was filled almost instantly, so I'm gonna have to wait to see it. But basically, they've taken Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and mashed them together and say people don't want these multiple different applications. Let's pull them all into one app. But I think what they've really done a nice job is to say, well, what are the things that people are actually going to do on a mobile device? You're not going to write a 100-page Word doc. It's just, there's no way you're going to thumb your way through that document on your phone. But there are workloads that make a lot of sense in that. One that you mentioned, that the phone has a camera, and the camera can take pictures of documents, it can turn them into Excel, it can turn them into PowerPoints, it can turn them into Word docs. That's a really powerful scenario in there. And having that all in one app that you just work within that one application, I think makes a lot of sense. So I'm keen to actually get my hands on it.
And I think that what's key there as well is this new Office app. I think there is some confusion around, do I need to get rid of all my Office apps? And the answer is no. This new one they're building is kind of a light of everything.
Yeah.
It's one that basically if you want to get Office, but you don't necessarily have full-on Office 365 licensing, that one will actually give you the free version of Office across everything.
Yeah, and I tell my clients, if
Whatever.
if you want, you can install the Word, Excel, PowerPoint apps on your phone, but the reality is most of the time you don't need them. You install the OneDrive app and it's got file viewers for, I don't know what the number is now, 300 plus different types of documents that it can render in there. And normally on your phone, you're consuming, you're not creating. So you can consume through that. And this kind of takes that to the next step. And I'm actually curious, I don't know if you guys know, does the OneDrive app go away, or does that end up rolling into the Office app as well?
That was my question as well. I was looking for that answer and I didn't see it in the announcements.
Yeah,
and I see it more as this Office app is kind of Microsoft's way of getting people into using Office. It's kind of the intro. It may have been oversold a little bit as it's everything all in one. Instead, I think it's hey, Microsoft,
a little bit of everything,
make its way to Samsung, so we're going to put all of Office in a single app that we can push on to Samsung. Like, I think that was the early way that they've introduced it, was getting it into these OEMs essentially.
Well, another example too is that there was talk about, well, now that we have the Office Lens experience within OneDrive, are we getting rid of the Office Lens app? And they said no.
It's still there.
Yeah,
they're not updating it.
There's no plan, as far as I understand. They said there's no plan as of today to remove it from the App Store. It's out there and available and loved by many.
Yeah, I loved it. Now I just use OneDrive because it has it all in it. But yeah, it's a great, hey, I want to take a picture of that whiteboard or of this document, and it's going to sharpen it up and fix it up from an aspect point of view. Great. I guess we should, actually talk a little bit about SharePoint, because there was some announcements on that side too. We haven't really touched on that yet. I guess one of the big things is just investments they're making in the intelligent intranet. We saw some interesting things last year. They brought out the lookbook. They've actually got a whole new lookbook that they've launched at Ignite this year.
Lookbook
great.
2.
Yes.
Is there
and the interesting thing is it's not just a PDF, but you can actually go to the lookbook.microsoft.com as the URL if you want to look it up, and you can actually deploy pieces of the lookbook right into your own tenant. So if you say, I love the look of that site and I want to actually touch it and play with it and change it, well, you can take that template and put it into your tenant and start experimenting with it. That's a great idea. And some of the publishing features that have been long promised and hopefully soon coming. I mean, there's always this challenge at Ignite that they say, hey, here's all the cool new features. Yeah, but when are they actually going to come out? When to first release get them? When do they get generally available? And they try to be as fair as they can. They don't want to commit to future date promises because things change all the time. They're working in a very agile mode, but they were fairly clear to say, hey, this is a this year, as in this calendar year, feature that you should see before December, in the next 2 months, versus this is a first half of next year. Does that mean January or June? It's hard to say.
That seemed to be the default answer for things that were beyond this year, just like in H1 2020.
Yes,
like,
of 2020,
wow.
Exactly.
I
mean, some of the things.
I think it's as well this. Hey, how come SharePoint wasn't so big in the keynote? Is SharePoint going away? Is SharePoint...
Last year was mentioned 18 times in the keynote. This year only 16 times. What's going on?
Yeah, exactly. I do think that even in Jeff Teeper's session, he kind of mentioned, he's like, we wanted to give some of these other products a chance to actually have a little bit of the spotlight. So much, I think, of Ignite was all about interop, a lot of integration and like that, the SharePoint exposing itself in Teams in a huge way, to be able to get the rich lists integration where SharePoint actually making the connection rather than Azure making that connection. I think that was probably one of the bigger things in terms of first-class citizen, SharePoint and Teams together. I mean, come on.
That's been talked about for a while, and I hope it's not more talk. Like, I actually want to see the full, customizable views and lists and all the rich SharePoint functionality in the Teams tab. Is where we need to go, and it sounds like we're almost there. So that's good to hear.
Yeah. Well, and so I mean, the big at the front end of this, I mean, home sites has been something we've been hearing about for I don't know how long, almost a year.
The SharePoint conference in the spring was really the big reveal for home sites. You're right, but it actually GA'd at Ignite this week. So yes, it's real. If it's not in your tenant yet, it's going to be the next 1 month, 2 months before it gets to your ring and deployed out to you from there.
You know, I almost want kind of like time lapse to be able to scroll down through the announcements versus what's gone live and be able to scroll down through and see all the things.
At what point in time, yeah.
But it's because I think it's important too. Well, part of that, how that impacts me is so I do these productivity tips and webinars and things around there. And there's things that I hear about and I'm excited to go and share and talk about. And it can't, as we're waiting to, so you have to scroll to the bottom of the article before I get too excited about something. I go down to the bottom, and to look at, okay, it's being GA'd now versus, H1 2020. And then I just kind of, all right, I mark it.
I can talk about this, yeah.
But it's something that you do need to, just like looking at licensing to, like, it's just lesson learned again and again and again is look at the release date and also then look and make sure that you understand, hey, is this something that's an enhanced feature that's, additional licensing around, or is it within the SKU that I have for me, E3?
Right.
Always important to watch those.
Yes. I mean, as a Canadian, one of the things interesting on the intelligent internet was the whole multilingual side of things. I mean, any work that we do in the public sector, in government, has to be bilingual. We have to have English, French in there, and that's always been a challenge. And Modern didn't have a multilingual story, and honestly, the old multilingual story from the Moss days is pretty painful with the way it was wired up from that point of view. Not a fan of that. So seeing where they're going now, where multilingual pages are single pages, it's not this variations concept that we had before. It's going to be a lot cleaner, I think, and better from that point of view. So keen to see where that's going.
I saw that question popping up in the pre-day. We were all hanging around on Sunday with some of the sessions. It was some of the first questions that were asked was something new was shown, and people would ask, "What's going on with multilingual support for each of these things?" And they were fairly prepared for those questions and the responses. So that's good.
Things like change tracking, understanding who's changed what in a page from that point of view. Page scheduling. Hey, I've got an announcement. I'm in comms and I wanted to hit at 8 a.m. on Monday morning, and I don't want to have to be at my desk at the precisely right moment. I want to queue that up. And we've had that for years on the classic pages. We're seeing more of those features now start to come into the modern experience as well.
The version history, the tracking that way, to be able to go in and look at that and go back, not just at, what's changed, but what was changed 3 changes back and by whom and what are the impacts of that. And it's great to see that kind of detail available.
Yeah, actually, I'm going to segue completely off for a minute and come back. So just twigged on something with the change tracking, which is the whole @mention commenting stuff when I'm in Office documents. So I'm writing a Word document. We actually had an RFP that was due at midnight last night at 11 p.m. There's 3 of us still in there doing our thing and tagging each other to say, well, what about this section and that section? And that's been a cool feature that's been in there for about 6 months or so, that when you mention somebody, they get an email notification to say, hey, Peter's mentioned you in this document at this spot, and directs them into there. But now it's going further than that to say, well, you can actually start a threaded conversation that comes out of that notification. And the comments that you make in that conversation, right now I think just in Outlook, but I can't imagine the Teams is far behind either, that those comments actually end up back in the Word document. So I don't even need to open the document. I get a little bit of context in the comment tag, put a comment back in, and boom, that actually ends up back in. So to Joel's point around that interoperability, I mean, we're seeing a lot of really cool integrations through the Office suite, through SharePoint, through Teams, through Outlook, and pulling those things all together.
And the fluid, when you start talking about fluid, where somebody could actually be in Outlook, someone else could be in Teams, somebody else could be in Word, and you're all working on
all pointing to the same. Yeah.
Yeah. Really.
It is very cool technology from that point of view. Actually, we haven't talked too much about search. We talked about Project Cortex, which obviously built on top of search, but search itself, you know, I don't know about YouTube, but you know, we've kind of been dying to be able to tweak and change and customize the modern search experience. Because anytime a client says, well, we want something very specific, we're like, okay, well, we're back into classic, and it doesn't look nearly as pretty as the modern, and it's a lot more work from that point of view. So they're now saying, okay, it's time we're actually going to open up some of the customization ability in search. I didn't get a lot of detail as to exactly what that meant. You know, can we build custom refiners and views? I know you can customize the search results page itself is kind of the first thing that they're looking at there. Thoughts on that side?
Yeah, I did see there was a lot of announcements related to search and a lot of things they've been promising. The big thing I saw was the connectors. So there's a bunch of connectors that they're going to be providing as just, hey, here are these connectors, but also that the ability to build connectors.
To create custom connectors to your own external systems, yeah.
So that ability, when we start talking about what is search in Office 365 or what is this, can we really get enterprise search? It's like the enterprise search has made its way back into, you know, your ability to really do true enterprise search right there in the interface. And
right.
Kind of getting back to that vision of what is Microsoft Search and bringing those worlds back together.
Yeah, and that's still a journey that's in progress. I mean, I love the vision of a unified search experience, regardless of what product you're in, or you know, whether you're in your Windows Start menu, you're in your SharePoint search, you're in line in PowerPoint or Word or Excel. That there's a common search experience. We're not there yet. You know, it's coming. We're seeing a lot of it in the SharePoint side, in the Bing, and then in the Office.com.
And the Office.com has probably the most comprehensive of as far as federated across those various experiences. But yeah, that's been so I don't know how many search experiences across Microsoft 365 we're down to. I think last count was like 5 or 6. You know, so but that is
the Bing one I find is actually the richest one right now. I mean, it has Yammer and Teams conversational search in there that hasn't made it into the others at this point yet. So yeah, I'm keen to see them properly unify that and provide that full rich experience across this. I mean, this was a question I went into Ignite with. I didn't come back with an answer, which is I personally, you know, we've gone all in on Teams and we've got a ton of content in there, and I find it really challenging now finding relevant stuff in Teams. I don't find that there's good search experience in there, either in product or in the Bing.com enterprise search into Teams. I don't know if you guys have similar experiences.
Well, there is the new search filters, and not every tenant has it. In fact, even over in the Microsoft booths, I was trying to show it to a customer, and the tenant realized the tenant didn't have that within Teams. So you have the ability, like the question came, and it's like, well, I want to be able to go in and search like specifically within a team or within a channel, and to get very granular, and you can't really do it. It was kind of this, you know, when search was moved up to the top bar of the window, it just seemed to it just
searches everything.
It got it to everything. And so now when you go up and do a search term, and there's the little filter on the right side, you click on that and it drops down. It allows you to go in and search by team, by channel within that team, and specify within that. And then you can look at the various artifacts. You can look at the search specifically within conversations, so that within the chat, within people, and then within the content. So you have the exchange, the people, and the SharePoint components to that search. And so you can get much more specific and targeted. If you want to look across everything that you have access to, that's that default experience across all of the teams that you have permissions to get into. Or you can get much more granular. I'm not saying it's perfect. I'd like additional refiners and things around that, but you can start to focus in on content type, you know, Word doc, PowerPoint, whatever those things are. But to be able to go and look at, if I want to exclude chat and just look through files, you can do that.